Let's look at how to develop a mission-ready package using the Mutual Aid Support System, or MAS. Registering for an Emac account. If you do not already have an Emac login, you will need to register for an account. Select Register from the home page of the Emac website at www.emacweb.org. Complete all of the fields and select Register. Once registered, log into the site by selecting Login at the top right of the page and entering the username and password you selected during the registration process. These fields are case-sensitive. Upon login, you will be redirected to the Emac gateway. Select the Mutual Aid Support System, MAS 2.0, from the list of quick links from the right side of the gateway page. Begin by selecting Add New MRP. A new window will pop up asking you to enter the MRP title. Enter a title for your MRP and select Save. A new window will open that shows all of the mission-ready package fields. As you can see, there are 8 tabs: MRP, Travel, Personnel, Equipment, Commodities, Other, Cost Totals, and Funding. The MRP tab contains the primary resource information, while Travel, Personnel, Equipment, Commodities, and Other tabs contain estimated costs. The Cost Totals tab displays the total estimated costs for the MRP, as well as a breakdown by each category. The last tab, Funding, is where you can select any federal funding that help to support the creation and maintenance of the resource. You can navigate between the tabs by selecting them. Let's walk through the fields in each tab to identify what information is needed, starting at the top of the MRP tab. The Assisting State Tracking Number is the number assigned by the Home State Emergency Management Agency to track the resource. You will only have this number if your resource is in a state inventory and they have given you a tracking number. In the box Resource Provider Tracking Number, you will enter the tracking number you have assigned to this resource if you have one. In the next section, Resource Information and Location, make any updates to the title of the mission-ready package. This title should provide a clear definition of the resource being packaged. For example, Type 2 Incident Management Support Team. Next, enter the government jurisdiction and department agency name. This is the primary owner or employer of the resource. Enter the physical address location where this resource is located, including the country, city, state, and zip code. Do not enter P.O. Box mailing information. The physical location must be entered, or you must enter the longitude-latitude of the resource below in the Resource GPS Location section. If you entered the address above, you can select the checkbox Auto Geodecode, and the longitude-latitude will populate when the record is saved. In the next section, you will enter the resource point of contact. This is the name and contact information for the individual most knowledgeable of the MRP and its contents, and who is responsible for maintaining operational readiness of the MRP. The Nims Tier 1 Criteria section is where you identify whether your resource meets the criteria for a National Tier 1 Nims resource typing definition or job title's position qualification. MAS uses a live data feed from the FEMA Resource Typing Library tool to ensure you are using the most up-to-date Tier 1 criteria. To see if your resource has a corresponding Nims Tier 1 typing definition or job title position qualification, simply use the Select Criteria button to search and select your resource typing definition or job title position qualification. Next, we will identify the resource classification, discipline, and core capability using the drop-down boxes. Classification identifies the jurisdictional ownership of the resource. Identifying the discipline will be used to help identify the resource during the request phase. Select your primary core capability. The core capabilities are defined by FEMA and will be used in reports. If your jurisdiction state utilizes emergency support functions, or ESFs, enter the ESFs that will be supported by this MRP. You can contact your local or state EMA if you are unsure. In mission capabilities, enter the missions this resource can complete. Each resource may have more than one mission capability, as the resource may have multiple functions, services, and tasks that can be conducted while on a mission. In Detailed Resource Description, enter a detailed description of the resource. This section must be very descriptive, especially if there are no corresponding Nims definitions for your resource. Describe the resource in plain, simple, thorough language, where it will be clear exactly what the resource is, so when a resource request is made, the State Emergency Management Agency will be able to match the request with your resource. The next section identifies whether the resource is fixed and expected to operate from a single defined location, or mobile, meaning it's capable of operating from various field locations within the requesting state. Clicking on the space will cause a drop-down box to appear. Select the appropriate choice. Note, if the MRP is a mobile asset but does not provide a built-in transportation component or will rely on transportation provided by another resource. Please note these requirements in the travel section. Space and size requirements identify the footprint required. That is, the amount of space the resource will require when set up. While we typically think of this for fixed resources, if vehicles or large pieces of equipment need to be stored overnight, it should be noted here as well. Limiting factors identify anything that may impede the function of the resource. This may include the maximum number of working hours per day for each person deployed, maintenance components included to service equipment, security needed for pharmaceutical stockpiles, not self-sufficient, deployment limited to 1 week duration only, and other such conditions that could limit mission performance. Logistical support requirements identify any provisions the resource may need during the mission, such as the need for internet access, electricity, maintenance support for vehicles, including any provisions for feeding, billeting, or sanitation requirements for personnel assigned to the MRP. The deployment timeline is the number of hours the resource will need from notification until they are able to mobilize. This is expressed as an N+ number. As an example, N plus 12 means that the resource will require 12 hours from notification until they will be ready to deploy. The next section identifies information about the personnel assigned to the mission. First, list personnel by type and the number assigned to the MRP. For example, 1. Type 2 Incident Commander. 1. Type 2 Operations Section Chief. 1. Type 2 Planning Section Chief. 1. Situation Unit Leader. 1. Resource Unit Leader. 1. Type 2 Logistics Section Chief. 1. Type 2 Finance Admin Section Chief. Next, identify any licenses, certifications, or other professional standing required by the resource provider for personnel assigned to the mission. Finally, enter requirements for rotation of personnel. For example, 7 personnel for 14 days working 8 hours of regular time and 4 hours of overtime per day for 14 days. On day 12, an additional 7 personnel will deploy to replace the first shift of personnel. They will work 8 hours of regular time and 4 hours of overtime per day for 14 days. Total number of personnel assigned to the mission will be 14. The final section identifies information about the equipment that is part of the mission. Identify the number of fuel-consuming pieces of equipment and the number of non-fuel-consuming pieces of equipment. Next, identify the equipment requirements. This may include connectivity with communication networks and internet access. A statement that equipment can be operated for only 8 hours per day. That equipment must be decontaminated at the end of each shift. That equipment must be decontaminated and rehabilitated immediately upon return home to duty station. Or that vehicles must be serviced and maintained on a daily basis. The property type identifies the type of equipment that is being used as either expendable, accountable, or sensitive. It is not necessary to cite how the equipment will be used or operated. Finally, identify any maintenance and rehabilitation requirements for the equipment.